The morning air on Kepler station carried the usual mix of recycled atmosphere and the faint metallic tang that reminded everyone they were floating in the void between stars. Maya Chen walked through the corridors of the Galactic Defense Academy with her head down, clutching her data pad close to her chest like a shield. To anyone watching, she was just another human student struggling to keep up in a universe dominated by species far more naturally gifted in the arts of war. The academy halls buzzed with activity as cadets from dozens of worlds hurried to their morning classes. Tall, muscular Carathians moved with predatory grace, their scaled skin gleaming under the artificial lighting. The insectoid Centauri clicked and chittered to each other in their native tongue, their compound eyes tracking multiple conversations simultaneously. Elegant Asterii floated inches above the ground, their crystalline bodies catching and refracting light in mesmerizing patterns. And then, there were the humans. Maya glanced around at her fellow Terrans scattered throughout the crowd. Most looked as overwhelmed as she felt, constantly checking their schedules, stumbling slightly in the station's artificial gravity, squinting at alien script on the directional signs. Humanity had only joined the Galactic Coalition 15 years ago, and their presence at the Academy was still seen by many as a formality rather than a necessity. "Watch where you're going, primate," growled a voice above her. Maya looked up to see Vraktar, a Carathian third-year cadet, whose bronze scales marked him as military nobility from the warrior caste. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, with arms like tree trunks and claws that could punch through steel plating. Behind him, his usual entourage of admirers watched with amused expressions. "Sorry," Maya mumbled, stepping aside. "Sorry." Vraktar's reptilian features twisted into what passed for a sneer among his kind. "Your species has been saying sorry since you crawled out of your gravity well. Maybe that's why you're losing the war." Several nearby cadets turned to watch the confrontation. Maya's cheeks burned with embarrassment and something else, something darker that she fought to keep buried. The Hydran War had been raging for 3 years now, ever since the crystalline hive mind had emerged from dark space and begun consuming entire star systems. Humanity's colonies had been among the first targets. "The Coalition is losing the war," Maya corrected quietly. "Not just humanity." Vraktar's golden eyes narrowed. "The Coalition wouldn't be losing if we didn't have to protect weak species that can't defend themselves. Your people are farmers and merchants, not warriors. You have no business in a military academy." The words stung because they echoed what Maya had heard whispered in countless conversations, read in unofficial reports, seen in the statistics that everyone pretended not to notice. Human cadets had the highest dropout rate. They scored lowest on physical combat assessments. They struggled with advanced weapons systems designed for species with enhanced reflexes or additional limbs. "Maybe you're right," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. But, as she walked away, something cold settled in her chest. Vraktar didn't know that Maya had grown up on Harmony, one of the first human colonies to face the Hydran swarms. He didn't know that she'd been 13 when the crystal ships arrived and began turning her world into a lifeless husk. He didn't know about the months she'd spent hiding in the ruins of her city, watching her neighbors consumed by creatures that turned flesh into crystal and thoughts into static. Most importantly, he didn't know what Maya had learned to do in those dark months, what she'd had to become to survive. The tactical simulation classroom was packed when Maya slipped in just before the session began. Professor Thane, a grizzled Asterii veteran whose crystal body bore the scars of countless battles, floated at the front of the room beside a massive holographic display. "Today we will be analyzing actual combat footage from the Hydran front," Thane announced, his voice resonating with crystalline harmonics. "The Battle of Rigel 7, 3 weeks ago. 4th Fleet encountered a Hydran harvester swarm while defending the civilian evacuation." The hologram flickered to life, showing the black of space punctuated by the brilliant flashes of energy weapons and the twisted, organic shapes of Hydran vessels. The creatures' ships looked like they had been grown rather than built, all curves and pulsing veins that channeled some form of bioenergy. The engagement lasted 17 hours, Professor Thane continued. 4th Fleet lost 60% of its ships. The evacuation failed. 2 million civilians were converted to crystal matrix. Maya's hands clenched in her lap as the battle played out before her. She watched coalition cruisers, their shields failing under waves of crystal spears that could phase through conventional armor. She saw fighters spinning helplessly as Hydran boarding pods attached like parasites, disgorging creatures that moved like living nightmares. Note the Hydran tactical adaptation. Thane pointed to a cluster of enemy ships. They learned from each engagement, evolving their strategies in real time. This is why conventional military doctrine continues to fail against them. A Zentari cadet raised one of her forearms. Professor, why don't we see any human ships in this footage? I thought the Terran Defense Force was assigned to this sector. Thane's crystal form dimmed slightly. The human vessels were reassigned to rear guard duties. Their technology was deemed insufficient for frontline combat. Maya felt every eye in the room turn toward the human students. Beside her, Marcus Rodriguez, a cadet from Mars, shifted uncomfortably. On her other side, Sarah Kim stared fixedly at her hands. The message was clear. Humanity couldn't compete on the same level as the other coalition species. However, Thane continued, there is one piece of footage from this battle that defies explanation. The hologram shifted, zooming in on a section of space near one of the evacuation ships. At first, Maya saw nothing unusual, just the chaos of battle and the slow-moving bulk freighter struggling to reach the jump point. Then she saw it. A small figure in a standard coalition EVA suit was floating in space between the freighter and 3 approaching Hydran interceptors. As Maya watched in growing disbelief, the figure moved with impossible grace, dodging energy blasts that should have vaporized any human instantly. In their hands, they carried what looked like a modified plasma rifle, but they were using it in ways that defied every tactical manual ever written. The individual intercepted the Hydran attack wing single-handedly. Thane's voice carried a note of bewilderment. Analysis of the debris field suggests they destroyed all 3 interceptors using only standard coalition equipment. The freighter escaped with 8,000 civilians. The figure in the recording moved like they were dancing, flowing from one position to another with movements too fluid for human physiology. They seemed to anticipate each enemy attack before it happened, sliding through space as if gravity and inertia were merely suggestions. Coalition intelligence has been unable to identify this individual, Thane continued. The recording was transmitted automatically by the freighter's sensors, but no one came forward to claim credit for the action. Whoever this was, they saved those civilians and then vanished. Maya's heart hammered in her chest as she watched herself on the screen. The recording quality was poor enough that her features were obscured by the EVA helmet's reflective visor, but she recognized every movement, every calculated strike. She had hoped the freighter hadn't been recording, that her intervention would go unnoticed like all the others. The movement patterns are unprecedented, Thane was saying. No known species in the Coalition database fights like this. Some analysts believe it might be a new type of artificial enhancement or perhaps a previously unknown alien ally. Vraktar's voice cut through the classroom's stunned silence. Or it's fake. Human propaganda to make their species look more capable than they actually are. A few cadets chuckled, and Maya felt that familiar cold weight settle in her stomach. She wanted to stand up, to tell them exactly how real that footage was, to show them what a human could do when they stopped playing by the rules the galaxy expected them to follow. Instead, she sat perfectly still and let them believe what they wanted to believe. After class, Maya walked through the station's observation deck, staring out at the stars. Kepler Station orbited a gas giant whose swirling clouds reminded her painfully of home. Harmony had been a beautiful world, all green forests and blue oceans under a gentle yellow sun. Now it was a sphere of crystal and silence, another jewel in the Hydran Collective's growing empire. Impressive footage, wasn't it? Maya spun to find Professor Thane floating behind her, his crystalline features unreadable. Up close, she could see the battle damage that scored his body, places where his natural crystal matrix had been shattered and regrown imperfectly. I suppose, Maya said carefully. Though like Vraktar said, it could be fabricated. Thane's inner light pulsed in what Maya had learned was the Astery equivalent of laughter. You don't believe that any more than I do. I've seen enough combat to recognize the real thing. Whoever that warrior was, they had extensive training and experience. The question is where a human would acquire such skills. Maya forced herself to meet the professor's multifaceted gaze. I wouldn't know. I'm just a first-year cadet from a farming colony. Harmony wasn't just a farming colony, Thane said softly. It was also the site of the first successful human resistance against Hydran occupation. According to Coalition intelligence, someone taught the survivors how to fight back. Someone who understood Hydran tactics better than our best strategists. The observation deck fell silent except for the subtle hum of the station's life support systems. Maya could feel Thane studying her, those alien senses probing for any telltale sign of deception. The resistance on Harmony lasted 8 months, Thane continued. They developed techniques that we still don't fully understand. Hit and run tactics using modified civilian equipment. Psychological warfare that actually affected a hive mind. And always, they seemed to know exactly where the Hydrans would strike next. Maya's throat felt dry. I was just a kid. I hid in the ruins like everyone else. Yes, Thane agreed. A 13-year-old girl who watched her world die and somehow survived for 8 months in an active war zone. That takes more than luck, Cadet Shin. That takes skills that even our best Special Forces operatives struggle to master. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Maya could feel the professor's expectation hanging between them like a challenge. Part of her wanted to tell him everything, to explain about the desperate months of learning Hydran movement patterns, of figuring out their weaknesses, of becoming something more than human, because being human hadn't been enough to save her family. If someone did develop those techniques, she said finally, they'd probably want to keep them secret. The Coalition doesn't exactly encourage unorthodox methods. Thane's inner light flickered thoughtfully. Perhaps not. But, with the war going as badly as it is, we might need to reconsider what we're willing to accept. The Battle of Rigel 7 was a disaster, but it could have been worse. That unknown warrior saved 8,000 lives in a single engagement. He turned to leave, then paused. You know, Cadet Shin, I'm organizing an advanced tactical seminar for promising students. Small group, specialized training, focus on unconventional warfare techniques. You should consider applying. Maya watched the professor glide away, her mind racing. She had come to the academy hoping to blend in, to learn enough conventional tactics to be useful without drawing attention to what she had already learned. But the war was getting worse, and people were dying while she pretended to be just another struggling human cadet. The observation deck's viewport showed her reflection superimposed against the stars, and for a moment she saw not the quiet, unremarkable student she had worked so hard to become, but the shadow warrior who had danced through space and death to save strangers she would never meet. Perhaps it was time to stop hiding. 3 days later, Maya found herself standing outside Training Base 7, staring at the notice posted on the door. Advanced Tactical Seminar, Professor Thane, authorized personnel only. Her acceptance letter felt heavy in her pocket, though she still wasn't sure why she had decided to apply. The door slid open to reveal a space unlike the standard academy training rooms. The walls were covered with holographic displays showing real-time battle footage from across the Hydran front. In the center of the room, a dozen chairs were arranged in a circle, and Maya was surprised to see that half of them were already occupied. Marcus Rodriguez from her homeworld caught her eye and gestured to an empty seat. Beside him sat Sarah Kim, looking as nervous as Maya felt. But the other students weren't all human. She recognized Zaravel Thon, a Zentari pilot whose reflexes were legendary even among her naturally quick species. Across the circle sat Koth Hammerfist, a young Carathian who had been making waves in the combat rankings despite being only a second year. Interesting group, said a voice behind her. Maya turned to see Zephyr Cloudright, an Asteri whose family had lost 3-star systems to the Hydrants. Unlike most of his crystalline species, Zephyr's body showed no battle scars, but his inner light pulsed with an intensity that spoke of barely contained energy. I didn't expect so many non-humans, Maya admitted as they took their seats. Professor Thane doesn't seem to care about species, Zephyr replied, his harmonics carrying undertones of curiosity. He only invited cadets who showed unusual tactical thinking in his regular classes. Before Maya could ask what that meant, Professor Thane glided into the room, his crystal form dimming the overhead lighting as he activated the holographic displays. The walls came alive with star charts, fleet movements, and casualty reports that painted a grim picture of the Coalition's war effort. Welcome, Thane said, his voice resonating through the chamber. You have been selected because conventional military thinking is losing this war. The Hydrans adapt faster than we can develop new tactics. Our fleets are stronger, our weapons more advanced. But we continue to lose ground because we fight like civilized beings against an enemy that views civilization as a disease to be cured. The hologram shifted, showing the crystalline forms of Hydran warriors as they swarmed through the corridors of a Coalition battleship. Maya forced herself to watch without flinching, though the memories of similar creatures stalking through her hometown made her hands shake slightly. Each of you has demonstrated tactical thinking that deviates from standard doctrine, Thane continued. Cadet Velthon, your simulation scores show attack patterns that should be impossible for organic reflexes to execute. Cadet Hammerfist, you consistently find victory conditions that our strategic computers classify as mathematically improbable. The professor's multifaceted gaze swept the room. And some of you have shown understanding of unconventional warfare that suggests experience beyond what your records indicate. Maya felt that familiar cold weight in her stomach as Thane's attention lingered on her and the other human students. She wondered if Marcus and Sarah had their own secrets, their own hidden knowledge gained from surviving in a galaxy that seemed determined to prove humanity's weakness. Your first assignment, Thane announced, will be to analyze the Rigel 7 footage and develop tactical recommendations. But not just the official combat recordings. I've obtained sensor data from civilian ships, automated probes, even Hydran wreckage that was recovered after the battle. New images flickered to life around the room, showing angles of the battle that Maya had never seen before. Her breath caught as she recognized one particular sequence, a long-range sensor sweep that had captured her entire engagement with the Hydran interceptors. Pay particular attention to the unknown combatant, Thane said. Their methods may hold keys to developing new tactical doctrines. I want detailed analysis of their movement patterns, weapon modifications, and strategic decision-making. Zara Velthon raised one of her forearms. Professor, if this individual used such effective techniques, why haven't they been integrated into coalition doctrine? Because, Thane replied, the techniques appear to be based on principles that our military theorists classify as impossible. The combatant moves as if they can predict enemy actions before they occur. They use gravity and momentum in ways that violate standard physics models. Most importantly, they seem to understand Hydran psychology in ways that our xenobiologists insist is impossible for non-collective species. Koth Hammerfist's deep voice rumbled through the room. Perhaps they are Hydran, a rogue collective unit fighting against its own kind. Possible, Thane acknowledged. But the body configuration is clearly humanoid, and the equipment used is standard coalition issue. More likely, this represents a new form of human enhancement or training that has been developed in secret. Maya's palms were sweating as she watched her own image dodge through space. On the high-resolution displays, she could see details that the original footage had missed. The way she moved wasn't entirely human, she realized. Months of fighting creatures that existed partially outside normal space-time had changed her, taught her to think, and move in ways that bent the rules of physics. I want each of you to focus on a different aspect of the engagement, Thane continued. Cadet Shen, since you're human, I want you to analyze whether these techniques could be taught to other members of your species. The weight of the assignment settled on Maya's shoulders like a lead blanket. How could she analyze her own techniques without revealing that she already knew exactly how they worked? How could she write a report on teaching methods she had learned through desperation and months of trial and error? Professor, Sarah Kim spoke up, her voice carefully controlled. What if the techniques can't be replicated? What if this individual was simply unique? Thane's inner light pulsed thoughtfully. Then, we will need to find them and learn from them directly. The war is not going well, Cadet Kim. The latest intelligence reports suggest that the Hydrans have begun targeting core coalition worlds. Earth itself may be under threat within 6 months. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Maya had known the war was going badly, but hearing it stated so bluntly made her chest tighten with familiar fear. She thought of her adopted family on Luna Station, the people who had taken her in after Harmony fell. They would be among the first to die if the Hydrans reached the Sol system. Your reports are due in 1 week, Thane announced. Use every resource available to you. Speak with combat veterans, consult with xenobiologists, run your own simulations. I don't want theoretical analysis. I want actionable intelligence. As the class dispersed, Maya lingered behind, staring at the frozen image of herself floating in space between the freighter and certain death. She had saved 8,000 lives that day, but how many more could she save if she stopped hiding? Impressive work, don't you think? Maya turned to find Zephyr beside her, his crystalline features reflecting the holographic displays and patterns that hurt to look at directly. It's certainly unusual, she replied carefully. Unusual is an understatement. I've run preliminary analysis on the movement vectors. This individual isn't just using unconventional tactics. They're using physics that shouldn't be possible for organic beings. Unless what? Zephyr's inner light brightened. Unless they've learned to think like the Hydrans. The collective exists partially outside normal space-time, which is how they coordinate across vast distances instantaneously. If someone could tap into similar principles without losing their individual consciousness. He trailed off, studying Maya with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. You grew up on Harmony, didn't you? One of the first human worlds to face extended Hydran occupation. Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. The resistance movements on Harmony were remarkably effective for civilian organizations, almost as if they had inside knowledge of Hydran capabilities. Zephyr's harmonics carried subtle undertones of suspicion. I've been researching the colonial records. There were several incidents where small groups of humans accomplished feats that should have been impossible. Desperation makes people capable of extraordinary things, Maya said, moving toward the door. Yes, it does, Zephyr agreed, falling into step beside her. But desperation alone doesn't explain tactical knowledge that surpasses our best military analysts. Someone on Harmony learned secrets that the rest of the coalition is still struggling to understand. They walked in silence through the academy corridors, past groups of cadets discussing their regular assignments. Maya envied them their simple concerns about exam scores and social hierarchies. Her own problems felt far more complex and dangerous. You know, Zephyr said as they reached the central hub, I've been thinking about forming a study group for this assignment. Pool our resources, share research. Would you be interested? Maya hesitated. Working alone would be safer, but it would also limit what she could learn about how others viewed her techniques. If she was going to eventually reveal her abilities, she needed to understand how the coalition would react. Sure, she said finally. As long as we're all committed to finding the truth, whatever it might be. Zephyr's inner light pulsed, and what she had learned was the Astery equivalent of a smile. Oh, I'm very committed to finding the truth, Cadet Chun. I suspect it's going to be far more interesting than anyone realizes. That evening, Maya sat in her small dormitory room, staring at the official report she had started writing. The document was full of careful speculation and theoretical analysis, the kind of academic exercise that would earn her a passing grade without revealing anything useful. She deleted it and started over. If the coalition was really going to lose the war without new tactics, then maybe it was time to stop pretending to be something she wasn't. The footage from Rigel 7 was already out there, being analyzed by military intelligence and xenobiologists across the galaxy. Sooner or later, someone would figure out the connection between the mysterious warrior and the survivor from Harmony. When that happened, Maya wanted to control the narrative. She began typing again, this time describing techniques that she actually understood. Movement patterns based on predicting enemy behavior through microgravitational analysis. Weapon modifications that turn standard plasma rifles into tools of surgical precision. Most importantly, psychological warfare methods that could disrupt Hydran collective thinking. Her fingers paused over the keyboard as she came to the most dangerous section. How could she explain that some of these techniques required a fundamental change in how humans thought about reality? That fighting the Hydrans effectively meant embracing a mindset that was no longer entirely human? A soft chime from her door interrupted her thoughts. Maya opened it to find Marcus standing in the corridor, his face grave. We need to talk, he said quietly. All of us. Sarah's found something in the archived footage that changes everything. Maya followed him through the dormitory's winding corridors to a small study room where Sarah was waiting with a portable holographic projector. The device was clearly military grade, far beyond what cadets normally had access to. Where did you get that? Maya asked. Sarah's smile was sharp and humorless. Same place I learned to analyze quantum signature patterns in Hydran energy weapons. Some of us came to this academy with more than just farming experience. The projector activated, showing a section of the Rigel 7 battle that Maya didn't recognize. The timestamp indicated it was from several hours after her encounter with the interceptors during the final phase of the evacuation. Watch the lower right quadrant, Sarah said, highlighting a section of space near one of the damaged freighters. Maya watched in growing astonishment as another figure in a coalition EVA suit moved through the battlefield, displaying the same impossible grace and tactical knowledge that she had used. But this wasn't her. She was certain of that. The movement patterns were similar, but not identical, like a variation on a theme. There were at least 3 of them, Marcus said quietly. 3 unknown combatants using techniques that no one is supposed to know. Sarah found evidence of at least a dozen more similar incidents across the Hydran front. Maya's mind raced as she stared at the footage. She wasn't alone. Somehow, other survivors of Hydran attacks had learned similar techniques, had found ways to fight back that went beyond conventional military doctrine. The question is, Sarah continued, who trained them? And why are they all pretending to be normal cadets at a military academy? The three humans looked at each other across the small room, years of carefully maintained facades beginning to crack. Maya realized that her secret was bigger than she had imagined, part of a network of hidden knowledge that could change the course of the war. But first, they would have to decide whether they trusted each other enough to reveal what they really were. The silence in the study room stretched for several heartbeats before Sarah spoke again. "I'll go first," she said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. "My name is Sarah Kim, and I'm not really a cadet from the Mars colonies. I'm Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim, formerly of the Terran Defense Force Special Operations Division. I was undercover on Proxima Station when the hydrants hit." Maya felt her carefully constructed world shift around her. If Sarah was military intelligence, then this meeting could be an elaborate trap. But the pain in the other woman's eyes looked genuine, and the footage she had uncovered was real. "Proxima Station was supposed to be impregnable," Sarah continued. "Military Command Center, Advanced Defense Grid, 20,000 military personnel. The hydrants took it in 14 hours. I spent 3 months in the ruins, learning to fight them with whatever I could scavenge." Marcus shifted in his seat, his farmer's facade cracking to reveal something harder underneath. "Miguel Rodriguez, originally from the agricultural world of Nueva España. The hydrants turned our farming equipment into crystal gardens and our people into collective drones. I learned to fight them because the alternative was watching my family become monsters." They both turned to Maya, expectation and wariness in their eyes. She could still lie, still claim to be nothing more than a lucky survivor. But Sarah's analysis proved that others had learned the same techniques, and if there really was a network of hidden warriors scattered throughout the coalition. "Maya Chun," she said finally. "Survivor of Harmony. I was 13 when the hydrants arrived, 21 when they finally left. 8 years of fighting creatures that existed partially outside reality taught me things that the coalition's best scientists insist are impossible." The relief on Marcus and Sarah's faces was palpable, as if they had been holding their breath for years. 8 years. Sarah leaned forward. "The official records say Harmony was evacuated after 6 months of occupation." "The official records are wrong," Maya replied. "Most of the population was evacuated or converted, but there were survivors. Maybe 300 of us, scattered through the ruins. We learned to hide not just our bodies, but our thoughts, to move through spaces that the collective couldn't perceive." She activated her own portable projector, displaying images she had never shown anyone before. Harmony as she remembered it in those final years, a world caught between human architecture and alien crystal growths. In the recordings, small figures moved through impossible spaces, using techniques that made the Rigel 7 footage look conventional by comparison. "We called ourselves the Whisper War," Maya continued, "because we fought in the spaces between thoughts, in the moments when the collective looked away. It took the hydrants 8 years to finally purge us completely, and by then, we had learned things about their nature that even they didn't fully understand." Marcus studied the images with professional interest. "How many of you made it off-world?" 17, Maya said. The number burned into her memory. "Scattered across the galaxy when the final evacuation ships arrived. We agreed to stay hidden, to blend in with the refugee populations. The coalition wasn't ready for what we had learned." Sarah's expression was grim. "But you've been fighting them anyway. The Rigel 7 incident wasn't your first intervention. It wasn't a question, and Maya didn't treat it like one. There have been others. Convoy escorts, evacuation assistance, intelligence gathering. Always careful to avoid official attention, always making it look like luck or equipment malfunction." "Same here," Marcus admitted. "I've saved maybe a dozen ships over the past 2 years. Small actions, nothing that would make the news feeds." "Which brings us to the real question," Sarah said, her military training taking control of the conversation. "If there are 17 of you, plus however, many survivors from other worlds learned similar techniques, why haven't you coordinated? Why are we all pretending to be helpless refugees when we could be making a real difference?" Maya felt the weight of years of carefully maintained isolation pressing down on her. "Because the coalition isn't ready for us. You've seen how they react to anything that doesn't fit their understanding of physics and biology. They'd want to study us, dissect our techniques, turn us into lab rats or weapons." "Maybe," Sarah conceded. "Or maybe they want to learn from us. The war is going worse than the public knows. According to my sources in TDF Command, we're looking at total defeat within 6 months unless something changes dramatically." The holographic displays around them showed the grim statistics, fleet losses, and territorial concessions that painted a picture of an inexorable slide toward extinction. The Hydrans weren't just winning, they were accelerating, their adaptation rate increasing with each victory. There's something else, Marcus said quietly. I've been tracking communication patterns from survivors of Hydran attacks. Not just the obvious ones like us, but ordinary civilians who showed unusual survival rates. There are patterns clustering around certain colony worlds and refugee centers. He activated his own projector, overlaying a galactic map with data points that looked like scattered stars. But, as Maya studied the pattern, she began to see the underlying structure. They're organizing, she breathed. The survivors are finding each other. Not all of them, Sarah corrected, but enough. And some of them aren't content to hide anymore. There have been incidents, unofficial military actions that don't appear in any official reports. Someone is building a shadow network of enhanced humans. The implications hit Maya like a physical blow. If survivors were organizing independently, if they were taking action without coordination or oversight, then it was only a matter of time before the coalition noticed. And when that happened, the response might not be recruitment and training. It might be fear and suppression. We need to make contact, she said, before someone makes a mistake that exposes all of us. Already working on it, Sarah replied, producing a small quantum communicator. I've been in touch with survivors on 3 different worlds. They're scared, Maya. The war is accelerating, and they're starting to think that hiding isn't an option anymore. A soft chime from Maya's personal communicator interrupted the conversation. She glanced at the message and felt her blood turn to ice. What is it? Marcus asked. Emergency alert from Kepler Station Command. Long-range sensors have detected a Hydran probe fleet entering the system. ETA 6 hours. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Kepler Station wasn't a military target. It was an educational facility with minimal defenses. If the Hydrans were coming here, it meant they had identified something worth investigating. They know, Sarah said, her voice flat. Somehow, the collective figured out that there are enhanced humans at the Academy. Maya's mind raced through possibilities. The Battle of Rigel 7 footage had been analyzed by Coalition intelligence, transmitted across military networks, studied by xenobiologists and tactical specialists throughout the galaxy. If the Hydrans had intercepted any of those transmissions, we have to evacuate, Marcus said. Get everyone off the station before they arrive. Evacuation ships can't outrun Hydran interceptors, Sarah replied. And even if they could, the collective would just follow them to their destinations. No, we need another option. Maya stared at the tactical displays, calculating distances and response times. 6 hours wasn't enough for a proper military response, but it might be enough for something else. Or we fight, she said quietly. Both her companions turned to stare at her, as if she had suggested swimming in a black hole. Fight. Marcus's voice cracked slightly. Maya, there are 3 of us against an entire Hydran probe fleet. Even with our abilities, we're talking about impossible odds. Not just 3 of us, Maya replied, pulling up her communication logs. Sarah said there are enhanced survivors on 3 different worlds. How long would it take to contact them? Quantum communication is instantaneous, but... Sarah paused as understanding dawned in her eyes. You want to call them here? To Kepler Station. I want to stop running, Maya said, the words carrying the weight of 8 years of hidden fury. The Hydrans are coming whether we fight or hide. But if we can coordinate, if we can show the Coalition what enhanced humans are really capable of, maybe we can change the course of this war. Marcus was shaking his head. It's suicide. Even if we could get a dozen enhanced survivors to the station in time, we'd still be massively outnumbered. Numbers aren't everything, Maya replied, calling up her analysis of Hydran fleet compositions. Probe fleets are designed for reconnaissance and small-scale harvesting, not major combat operations. Usually 6 to 8 ships, minimal collective coordination. If we can hit them fast and hard enough, we can disrupt their link to the main collective, Sarah finished, her tactical mind following the same logic. By time for proper military response, and give Coalition Command their first real intelligence on enhanced human capabilities. Maya nodded, feeling the familiar cold certainty settling in her chest. It was the same feeling she had experienced in the ruins of Harmony when she first understood that hiding would never be enough. There's a problem, Marcus said. Even if this works, even if we somehow win, there's no going back. We'll be exposed, all of us. The Coalition will want to know everything about our abilities, our training, our methods. Good, Maya replied. Because the alternative is watching the galaxy burn while we pretend to be normal. Sarah was already working on her communicator, sending coded messages across interstellar space. I can have operatives from 3 systems here within 4 hours. Maybe more if they're willing to take risks with hyperspace navigation. Do it, Maya said. And contact Professor Thane. If we're going to reveal ourselves, we might as well do it properly. As her companions worked their communication networks, Maya accessed her personal files and began composing a message of her own. Not to other survivors, but to someone she hadn't spoken to in 3 years. Commander Elena Vasquez, formerly of the Terran Defense Force, currently listed as missing in action after the fall of Harmony. The woman who had taught a 13-year-old girl how to survive in hell and emerge as something more than human. If Maya was going to stop hiding, she wanted her teacher to see what she had learned. The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation and coordination. Enhanced survivors began arriving on civilian transports, their identities hidden behind carefully crafted cover stories. Maya watched them gather in the Academy's auxiliary hangar, marveling at how normal they looked despite the impossible skills they carried. There was Dr. James Wright, supposedly a xenobiology professor from the Arcturus colonies. In reality, he was one of the 17 survivors from Harmony, a man who had learned to disrupt Hydran collective thinking through targeted electromagnetic manipulation. Captain Lisa Park arrived claiming to be a refugee transport pilot, but Maya recognized the precise movements and alert posture of someone trained in enhanced combat techniques. Her ship bore scorch marks that suggested recent combat experience. By the time the Hydran probe fleet entered sensor range, there were 12 enhanced humans gathered at Kepler Station, along with Professor Thane and a handful of non-human cadets who had insisted on joining whatever operation was being planned. "This is insane," Zephyr said, his crystalline form pulsing with nervous energy. "We're planning to engage a Hydran fleet with modified training equipment and a dozen civilian volunteers." "Not civilians," Maya corrected, activating the tactical display that showed the approaching enemy ships. "Warriors who have spent years learning to fight creatures that exist partially outside reality. We're going to show the Hydrans something they've never encountered before." The probe fleet was exactly what she had predicted, 7 ships arranged in the standard reconnaissance formation. They moved with the eerie precision of collective minds, their crystal hulls refracting starlight in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Enhanced teams to combat positions," Maya announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded desperate battles in the ruins of dead worlds. "Remember, we're not just fighting for the station. We're fighting to prove that humanity deserves to survive." As the enhanced survivors moved to their positions throughout the station, Maya felt a familiar transformation beginning. The careful mask of a struggling cadet fell away, replaced by something harder and infinitely more dangerous. The Hydrans had come looking for anomalous human activity. They were about to find far more than they had bargained for. The first Hydran probe ship reached Kepler Station's outer sensor perimeter exactly when Maya had predicted. Through the station's observation windows, she could see the crystalline vessel's organic curves as it pulsed with internal light, scanning for the anomalous human signatures that had drawn the collective's attention. "All enhanced teams, maintain radio silence until engagement," Maya transmitted through the quantum-encrypted network Sarah had established. "Remember, they're expecting to find frightened academics and half-trained cadets." The probe ship moved closer, its biomechanical tendrils extending to interface with the station's communication systems. Maya watched from the primary observation deck as Hydran boarding pods began launching from the larger vessels, their course calculated to breach the station's hull at strategic points. "Maya," Marcus's voice whispered through her earpiece. "Are you sure about this? Once we start, there's no going back." She thought about the past 8 years of hiding, of pretending to be something less than what the ruins of Harmony had forged her into, of watching coalition fleets break against Hydran swarms while she held back the knowledge that could save them. "We crossed that line the moment we decided to stop being victims," she replied. The first boarding pod struck the station's educational wing with a sound like breaking crystal. Emergency alarms began wailing as the Hydran assault creatures poured into the corridors, their forms shifting between solid matter and pure energy as they hunted for the enhanced humans they knew were hiding somewhere on the station. "Professor Thane, initiate evacuation protocol for non-enhanced personnel," Maya ordered, her voice carrying across the command frequency. "Enhanced teams, you are weapons free." The transformation was instantaneous. Across the station, 12 figures who had spent years pretending to be ordinary refugees, and academics dropped their carefully maintained facades and became something else entirely. Dr. James Wright was the first to engage, meeting a squad of Hydran warriors in the xenobiology laboratory. To any observer, it would have looked like suicide, one middle-aged academic against 6 creatures that could phase through solid matter at will. But Maya watched through the security feeds as Wright moved with impossible grace, his modified plasma torch cutting through Hydran defenses like they were made of paper. The creatures tried to phase out of his reach, but Wright seemed to know where they would rematerialize before they did. He had learned to track collective thought patterns during his years on Harmony, and the skill served him now as he systematically dismantled the assault team. Incredible, breathed Zephyr, who was watching the feeds from the command center. He's fighting like he can see 5 seconds into the future. From his perspective, he can, Maya replied, moving toward her own assigned position. The collective mind exists partially outside linear time. Once you learn to touch the edges of that perception, she left the explanation unfinished as her own section of corridor filled with Hydran warriors. These were different from the assault creatures, larger and more heavily armed. Scout-class units designed to capture and analyze threats. Maya smiled as she drew her modified plasma rifle, a weapon that looked standard to casual inspection but had been rebuilt according to principles learned in the ruins of dead worlds. The Hydrans moved toward her with the confidence of predators that had never encountered effective resistance from human forces. That confidence lasted exactly 3 seconds. Maya flowed between their energy blasts like water, her movements too fluid for standard human physiology. She had learned to think in quantum states during her years fighting creatures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and that mental flexibility translated into physical capabilities that bent the laws of physics. Her first shot took the lead scout through its central processing matrix, the modified plasma beam disrupting not just its physical form, but its connection to the collective consciousness. The creature collapsed into crystalline fragments, its dying confusion rippling through the network, and causing the remaining scouts to hesitate. That hesitation was fatal. Maya's second and third shots found their targets before the collective could adapt to her presence. And, suddenly, the corridor was filled with crystal dust and the screaming harmonics of a disrupted hive mind. All teams report, she called as she moved toward the next engagement zone. Right here, xenobiology section secured. 6 hostiles eliminated. Park confirming hangar bay clear. Boarding pods disabled. Rodriguez, engineering section. They tried to interface with our reactor core. Bad decision on their part. The reports came in from across the station as the enhanced survivors systematically eliminated the Hydran assault forces. But Maya knew the real test was still coming. The probe ships had launched their scouts expecting routine opposition, but the collective was already analyzing the data streams from their fallen warriors. Maya, Sarah's voice carried a note of urgency. Long-range sensors show the probe fleet regrouping. They're recognizing the threat and preparing for serious combat. Through the observation windows, Maya could see the 7 Hydran ships arranging themselves in a formation she recognized from her years on Harmony. Battle configuration, designed to coordinate collective firepower against a single target. Enhanced teams, prepare for ship-to-ship combat, she announced, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was asking. We're taking this fight to them. The enhanced survivors had prepared for this possibility. Hidden throughout the station were modified EVA suits, weapon systems that had been rebuilt according to principles the Coalition's engineers didn't understand, and, most importantly, the knowledge of how to fight creatures that existed partially outside normal reality. Maya sealed herself into her own suit, feeling the familiar weight of equipment that had been her salvation during the darkest years of the war. Around her, 11 other figures prepared for a battle that would determine not just their own fates, but the future of human participation in the galactic war. Launching in 30 seconds, Captain Park announced from the modified shuttle she had prepared. Remember, they're expecting us to fight like Coalition forces. Show them what humans really learned in the ruins of their conquered worlds. The shuttle bay doors opened onto the black of space, and 12 enhanced humans launched themselves toward a Hydran probe fleet that represented everything they had spent years learning to hate and fight. Maya felt the familiar cold clarity settle over her as they closed distance with the enemy ships. This wasn't like the desperate skirmishes on Harmony or the hidden interventions she had performed over the past few years. This was open warfare between the hidden warriors of humanity and the collective consciousness that had consumed entire star systems. The lead probe ship fired first, its bioenergy weapons creating patterns of destruction that could track and eliminate conventional fighters. But the enhanced humans weren't flying in conventional patterns. They moved through space like they were dancing, their formations flowing and shifting in ways that confused the collective targeting systems. Maya's first attack run took her directly through the overlapping fire patterns of 3 ships, her modified thruster systems allowing maneuvers that should have been impossible for human reflexes to execute. She had learned to think in quantum superposition during her years fighting creatures that existed in multiple dimensions, and that mental flexibility translated into flight patterns that existed in several possible states simultaneously. Her weapons struck the lead ship's communication matrix, the specially modified plasma charges disrupting not just the physical structure, but the quantum entanglement that linked it to the collective consciousness. For a crucial moment, the ship was isolated, cut off from the hive mind that guided its every action. That moment was all Dr. Wright needed. His attack run from the opposite vector struck the ship's primary processing core, his weapons configured to disrupt the delicate quantum states that allowed Hydran consciousness to function. The ship convulsed once and went dark, its biomechanical systems shutting down as its controlling intelligence simply ceased to exist. First kill confirmed, Wright reported, his voice carrying grim satisfaction. Collective tactical adaptation in progress. Maya could see it happening, the remaining ships adjusting their formations and weapon patterns to account for the impossible capabilities they were witnessing. The collective was learning, adapting, evolving its tactics in real time. But the enhanced humans had spent years learning to adapt faster. Pattern Delta 7, Maya called, referencing combat formations developed in the ruins of Harmony. They think they understand us now. Let's show them how wrong they are. What followed was unlike any space battle in Coalition records. 12 enhanced humans moved through a formation of 6 Hydran ships like ghosts, their attack patterns shifting and flowing in ways that defied conventional tactical analysis. They struck from angles that geometry insisted were impossible, used weapons in configurations that violated standard physics, and, most importantly, fought with a coordination that matched and exceeded the collective consciousness itself. Captain Park's attack run through the probe fleet's center formation eliminated 2 ships simultaneously, her modified weapons creating a cascade failure that spread through their shared consciousness like a virus. Marcus and Dr. Wright coordinated a flanking maneuver that left a 3rd ship spinning helplessly as its biomechanical systems were systematically dismantled. But it was Maya's final assault that truly demonstrated what 8 years of fighting creatures from outside reality had taught her. She approached the last 2 ships not through normal space, but through the quantum probability states that the collective used for faster-than-light communication. To observers on Kepler Station, she simply vanished from one location and appeared in another, her weapons already firing as she materialized inside the enemy formation. The probe ships tried to phase shift away from her attack, but Maya was already tracking their quantum signatures through dimensions that normal humans couldn't perceive. When the last ship went dark, the space around Kepler Station was filled with nothing but crystal debris and the fading harmonics of a collective consciousness that had just encountered something entirely outside its experience. All enhanced teams report, Maya called, though she could already see from the tactical displays that they had suffered no casualties. This is Professor Thane, came an unexpected voice on the command frequency. Maya, I need you and your teams to return to the station immediately. We have incoming Coalition fleet elements, ETA 20 minutes. Maya felt her stomach drop as she realized what that meant. The engagement with the probe fleet had been recorded, analyzed, transmitted to Coalition Command through channels she couldn't control. Admiral Richardson herself would want answers, and Maya doubted that the truth would be welcome. Copy that, Professor, she replied. Enhanced teams, return to station. Prepare for debriefing. As they docked with Kepler Station, Maya could see the Coalition fleet dropping out of hyperspace. Heavy cruisers, carrier groups, and, most ominously, the distinctive profile of a command dreadnought. Whatever response the Coalition had prepared, it was massive. Maya, Sarah said as they gathered in the docking bay, what do we tell them? Maya looked at her companions, these 12 individuals who had just proven that humanity could fight the Hydrans as equals. They had hidden for years, pretending to be weak while the galaxy burned around them. But now their secret was out, recorded in battle footage that would be analyzed by every military intelligence agency in Coalition space. We tell them the truth, she said finally. All of it. About harmony, about the other survivor worlds, about what humans can become when they stop accepting that weakness is their natural state. The docking bay doors opened to reveal Admiral Richardson herself, flanked by an escort of Coalition Marines and intelligence officers. Behind them came Professor Thane, his crystalline features bright with what Maya had learned to recognize as excitement. Cadet Chun, the Admiral said, her voice carrying decades of military authority. Or should I say, Commander Chun of the Harmony Resistance? We need to talk. Maya stepped forward, still wearing the modified combat suit that had carried her through impossible battles. For the first time in 8 years, she didn't try to hide what she was. Yes, Admiral, she replied. I think we do. 3 months later, Maya stood on the bridge of the TCSS Defiance, humanity's first ship designed specifically for enhanced combat operations. Around her, the crew worked with the fluid efficiency of humans who had learned to think and fight beyond the limitations their species had accepted for millennia. The Battle of Kepler Station had changed everything. Coalition Command had been forced to acknowledge that enhanced humans represented a tactical advantage they could no longer afford to ignore. The survivor networks that Sarah had uncovered were brought into the open, their members recruited into new special operations divisions designed around their unique capabilities. More importantly, the footage of 12 humans defeating an entire Hydron probe fleet had been transmitted throughout Coalition space, serving as proof that humanity was far more capable than anyone had believed. Recruitment to Terran Defense Force units had increased by 400%, and human colonies that had been written off as indefensible were suddenly requesting extended deployments of enhanced personnel. Commander, Lieutenant Park reported from the tactical station, long-range sensors are picking up Hydron fleet movements in the Vega system. Looks like they're preparing for another harvesting operation. Maya studied the tactical displays, calculating attack vectors and response times with mental processes that bent the laws of quantum mechanics. The war was far from over, but for the first time since the Hydrons had emerged from dark space, humanity was fighting back as equals. Set course for Vega, she ordered, and transmit a message to Coalition Command. Tell them the enhanced humans are going hunting. As the Defiance jumped to hyperspace, Maya thought about the scared 13-year-old girl who had hidden in the ruins of Harmony, learning to survive in a universe that seemed determined to prove her species' weakness. That girl had believed that hiding was the only option, that revealing what she had learned would only lead to fear and rejection. She had been wrong on both counts. The galaxy had been waiting for humans to stop accepting limitations that had never been real in the first place. And now, as enhanced warriors spread throughout Coalition space, teaching others the techniques learned in the ruins of dead worlds, Maya could see a future where humanity didn't just survive the Hydron War. They would win it.